My long journey has begun. I have traveled through nations, down rivers and over mountains to see the glorious Shrine of Heroes. It has long been forgotten, a bastion of hope and beauty. I am moments away from its heavenly elegance, and I cannot hold back my excitement. This is a disappointment.
Hello folks, and welcome to Dice Chatter. In today's episode, we are making this awesome-looking shrine, temple, altar, or whatever the hell you want to call it. This build was a test and a challenge for myself, wanting to incorporate a lot of cylinders and circular aspects into the terrain piece. But enough of me jabbering on, let's learn how I crafted this shrine. To start off, make sure you grab yourself a compass because this shrine is going to consist of 3 large circles that will cover the base of this piece. Those dimensions should pop up on the screen now. Also, thin hardboard, peel and stick vinyl tile, or any other thin base should do great with this project. Just make sure you have the means to cut out the base in a relatively close circular shape. I use a scroll saw, but a jigsaw or even a pair of scissors could do the trick. So we have our first of 3 circles. Let's brick the hell out of it. I will mostly be using 1 brick size for this entire project, and that should show up on the screen as well. This is just your typical insulation foam that you can find at any home improvement store, and I use my Proxon and your typical rock tumbling method to get the bricks to be not so perfectly rectangular. From here, we glue these on to fill out the circular base we just cut out. I found any PVA or hot glue should do the trick to adhere everything to the base. You just have to make sure that you fill in every spot that needs bricks or supports for that next circle we place on top, even those pesky edges. Once you have all of that set up, grab a hobby knife and cut the edge down so that it is flush and smooth around the entirety of the circle. And from here, we let the glue dry and we cut out circle number 2. Now, I went with some thin cardstock for this next circle because I want this thin base to be as invisible as I possibly can make it. And once we have circle number 2 cut out, we repeat this process we did with the base. We glue down our foam bricks, fill them out to the edge, and then cut them flush. Of course, we also do all the same steps for the 3rd and final circle. Simple stuff, but now we need to figure out a way to cut out some cylinders for the stone columns we'll be adding to the build. For that, we need the Proxon, a drill, and my average size brain. To make a functional circle jig, I took a rectangle out of the hardboard basing material I used for the base, and then grabbed a piece of balsa wood that fit perfectly into the guiding groove of the Proxon. I put a couple screws into 2 pieces of wood so that it would smoothly and effectively move on the hot wire table. Then I marked out an area that the hot wire would line up with. Cut out this straight section so that there would be no resistance with the actual wire, and then drill out a small hole just past the end of the initial cut. This is where we will place a small nail, and on the small nail we will place the foam that we want to make cylinders out of. Neat stuff. So, with a relatively functional circle jig, we can now cut out some larger cubes that we will turn into some stone columns. I went with a radius of 1 centimeter for each column section, and the key here is to go slow and keep the Proxon temperature down low. Of course, make enough posts to cover up any mistakes, and make another cylinder to elevate your shrine and attach your 3rd stone circle to. Then we create 6 foam cubes that will be our placeholder for these stone columns. We go ahead and make sure these supporting cubes are a little roughed up by using a hobby knife to chip away a corner or 2, and some foil to texture the outer edges. We also hot glue the posts we cut out on the Proxon and texture them in the exact same way. For deciding where to place the columns, I went with 6 locations, giving me enough space for models to move through the terrain as well as my fat hands when playing some games on the tabletop. Also, make sure to cap off these pillars with another textured foam cube, as this is where we will place a large foam piece to add a little bit more interest to the terrain build. To create this stone slab, I did everything freehand and made a rough outline on some cardstock. This cardstock will essentially act as a tracing guide on some foam to plan out this slab, and then later pop back over to the Proxon to cut it out. Make sure to texture this C-shaped foam piece like the pillars, and then just glue this bad boy on the top of the terrain build. From here, we have the optional goop step. Just a mix of PVA glue, water, and play sand. This is to add some grit and potentially hide some imperfections in the terrain piece with a touch of rubble. No need to go crazy, you still want to be able to place some models on the shrine. Then to finish off the building, we bring out the gallon jug of Mod Podge, thin it down with a touch of water, and paint the entire terrain piece to help seal in its spicy flavor. This shrine is looking good, and from here, we can jump right on over to painting. It is always exciting turning your pink foam monstrosity into a more colorful one. So I have painted up darker gray stone and some sandstone in some of my more recent videos. This time I wanted to try and create a more brighter stone texture and give it a used and ruined look. For starters, I prime the terrain piece black and give it that classic zenithal highlight with a white ink. From here, I take my skeleton horde contrast paint through my airbrush and focus on the recessed edges, the tops and bottoms of the pillars, and any areas where I feel I want to darken down the shrine. The goal here is to start with the darkest shade and then bring everything back up. And brighten it back up we shall with some dead flesh. Anyways, this time I focus on the areas of the build where I'd imagine would get the most exposure to sunlight if one existed on the tabletop. The main sections of the pillars, the tops of the stone slabs, you get the idea. After this, I go to my basic craft store paints, a darker gray and then a lighter one. I'll do a good mix of stippling it all over the terrain piece, and then for the lighter gray, I'll do a proper dry brushing over the build, trying to focus on the edges and brighter sections of the terrain piece. But there is one more painting step I want to tackle, and that is griming the shrine back up once again. I go with a brown and a green contrast paint and focus on the cracks, openings, broken pieces, or anywhere I want to add a little bit more color. I take my time spraying this on and finally take a white paint and just barely go over some sharp edges I want to brighten up. And we can call the painting complete. But whoa, I didn't want to end the build here though. I just needed to add a couple more details. We need some vines and foliage on this build. So I went out into nature and ripped some thin roots from the earth, let them dry out, and then covered them in PVA glue and some static grass. We meticulously placed these vines around the build and even some of those leftover grass clumps. And of course, you can even add in some other grass tufts throughout the build and even dab in some more color on the vines to give your build that extra pop. With all of these little details out of the way, we can call this build complete. There you have it, folks, my take on a ruined shrine. I feel like this build was a good challenge of ingenuity and creativity, a good chance to test some of my terrain building skills and how to implement them on the tabletop. And of course, I made 2 of these shrines. You always need more than one piece of terrain. Also, don't forget to do all the other socials, check out the Patreon if you'd like to support my work financially, comment, like, and subscribe. Until next time, folks, I want to thank you all for watching, and of course, happy gaming.